Hello and welcome to Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. My name is Sid Tan, and today we have with us Paul R. Taylor, one of our favorite friends from our favorite community, the downtown East Side. Welcome, Paul, and I know you're the longtime editor of the Carnegie Newsletter, and I know you're here to talk about the newsletter and particularly the fundraising. Can you tell us a little about the newsletter and your fundraising efforts?
Okay, the newsletter's been going since 1986, twice a month. People that write poetry, articles on issues that face the downtown East Side, and have been doing that as volunteers all this time. There's over 1,800 people have volunteered their talent and energy for it. The fundraising is something that's now become necessary for publication. There's no base funding. The government doesn't pay for it. The Carnegie Center doesn't pay for it. And so it's the readers and writers even who will contribute financially to keep the thing going.
So you would say if somebody wants to donate some money or wants to find out more about the Carnegie Newsletter, how would they do that, Paul?
All right. It's online. The website address is carnegienewsletter.org. It's at the Carnegie Community Center. The number is 604-665-2289. Now, there's scope for almost anything you want to write about. Most of the focus of the paper are on issues that face people who are living in really low incomes in one of the poorest areas in Canada. So anything that's considered, but if you want to write it from the perspective of people being, oppression is a bit harsh, but people who are put down or neglected or marginalized.
You've been editor for a long time, so you must have had a chance to catch what are the good things and the bad things, and what has inspired you, and what has made you despair. I just wondering if we could just go through some of them. What are some of the things that you found out about your community by editing the newsletter?
Well, the writers are often people who have addiction issues, mental health issues, trying to live on the margins of society, and writing about stuff that you don't find anywhere else. What's really inspiring is when their work is picked up somewhere else. It inspires people in the community, but it's also people who've written for the paper have gone on to be recognized as a city poet. Nationally, their books are picked up by national organizations. People have gone on to read or to write their own books. And that, they always say, well, I had my beginning with the Carnegie Newsletter. And that's really nice.
Thank you, Paul. Do some name dropping. Tell us, who are some of these people? Because I happen to know some of them have turned out to be really quite successful poets and writers.
All right, well, Bud Osborne is my favorite poet. He's got 5 or 6 books of poetry out. Sandy Cameron was an author and the historian of the downtown East Side. His work's been picked up nationally and internationally. Sheila Waxter went on to write 5 books. There have been plays written by Bob Sardi, by Bat Flanagan. There's artwork. A guy named Jim Doerr has put out his own books called Crunch, about what actually happens to people on the downtown East Side when forces that are seeking to gentrify and take over the area play up against people who are trying to survive there.
So people have been writing, they submit the writing to the Carnegie Newsletter, and Carnegie Newsletter is often their first and perhaps only attempt to be able to get their voices heard.
Yeah. That one thing that was really incredible is a man who learned how to read when he was about 45 and he couldn't spell, so he would make out a phonetic spelling of his words. And so I took it and printed it letter for letter, just how he written it. And he was just dumbfounded that somebody actually could read and understand what he'd written. He'd never been able to get past kind of feeling ashamed of being illiterate for most of adult life. So that kind of thing is really special.
Yeah, and it's not only the writers, but you have artists, you have cartoonists. Some of the stuff in there is incredible, and probably more incredible is its commentary or opinion. They're not mainstream commentary and opinion.
No. We've often been threatened. People have tried to find out which committee or which supervisory body in governments they can go to shut us down. They don't like when people come out and say, well, you have done nothing but watch your investment earn you more money than someone living down here makes in a year. And yet you want us to leave because we're inconvenient.
I know the newsletter is very well read. I read every issue. I have for a long time. I know that there used to be a newsletter down there in the early 80s called the Carnegie Crescent, which stopped running, and then you brought this back, and you've been working at it for 30 years now. We're going to have to go pretty soon, but before we go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, it needs to continue. That it's a kind of a voice that you don't find anywhere else. Most community centers, their newsletter can be published once a year. It will have a picture of the board of directors and laudatory statements from mayor or a councillor, and that's it. And you can publish it once a year, and that's all you need. Well, the Carnegie paper comes out twice a month, and has for almost 30 years.
Thank you for doing that, Paul. Thank you for being with us today. We have to get going. I've been here with Paul Taylor, Paul R. Taylor, 30-year editor of the Carnegie Newsletter, one of the most widely read newsletters, I would say, for the community, perhaps in Canada. It's so wonderful to see people doing this work, Paul, and again, as I say, we've got to go. My name is Sid Tan, and until we meet again, straight shooting and tight edits. You're watching Access Community Television.